Hey, and welcome to another video from our Diversity and Inclusion short input series. My name is Ninakiel and I'm the head of Diversity and Inclusion at Flying Sheep Studios in Cologne. In case you've missed the introductory talk on why you should care about diversity and inclusion, please make sure to check it out first. You'll find the link in the description below. Now, today we're going to talk about gender dynamics at the workplace. And to start with the definition, gender dynamics are informed by socio-cultural ideas about gender and the power relationships that define them. Now, gender dynamics can come in many different forms, including perceiving and judging the same behaviors differently based on the gender of a person. So, for example, men are perceived as assertive, while women who show the exact same behavior are perceived as bossy. It could mean hiring bias. It could mean undermining the authority of women and gender non-conforming employees at the workplace. It could refer to gender pay gaps as well as microaggressions and harassment. Now, all of these are very important topics that also affect the work culture in our industry, in the games industry. But today I'd like to focus on a very specific dimension of gender dynamics that's talked about less often and which may seem harmless at first, but actually can have a strong negative impact on people's careers. And that is office housework. Office housework encompasses a variety of tasks that are actually required to keep a workplace running smoothly, but they are unlikely to be rewarded or even recognized. And these low-value assignments, if you'd like to call them that, include, for example, cleaning the office kitchen, buying gifts for co-workers and planning parties, taking notes in meetings, and a range of administrative tasks that people are asked to do on top of their actual day-to-day responsibilities. Studies and surveys clearly show that these tasks are disproportionately given to women and people of color, with women of color being the most likely to be affected. And this can have serious implications for their careers. Now, you may wonder why that is, because at first glance, it seems pretty simple to just clean up occasionally or to just shop for gifts, right? So let's have a closer look at how these menial tasks can actually negatively affect the mental health of employees, their performance at work, lower their chances of being promoted, and how it increases the risk of losing diverse talent. So first things first, women are still much more likely to do a so-called second shift, which means that before and after their day at the office, they manage their homes and families. So very often, these employees already face a double burden and a very high mental load because they have to manage work, families, household, and relationships at the same time. So that means if these employees are approached at work and asked to just invite their colleagues to a meeting or just order lunch for everyone, then chances are that these tasks end up on a to-do list that's already really, really long. So they cause more stress than they would a less overburdened coworker. And being burdened with these less prestigious tasks and being cast in the stereotypical gender role of the caring woman can also have a detrimental impact on these women's self-esteem and contribute to a feeling of being undervalued at the company. But just as importantly, these menial tasks keep women and gender non-conforming people from focusing on and performing well in high-value tasks, which are crucial for positive reviews and for promotions. And that's because either the office housework simply takes up too much time, or because it requires so much energy that the individuals that are affected by this housework can't deal with their actual responsibilities as well as they would otherwise. Or more specifically, it's because when someone has to take notes in a meeting, they can't really actively engage in the discussion, which means that they won't contribute to the project at hand and won't make a good impression on management. And this dynamic also, very importantly, holds back women in junior positions because they have less time and fewer resources to acquire new skills and improve their existing ones. And meanwhile, their co-workers, and especially the white men among them, are usually allowed to focus on what they were hired to do, and so they are likely to perform better and have a better chance at being promoted. To quote Lise Westerlund, who is an economics professor at the University of Pittsburgh and wrote a book on the topic, we think this is a central part of why women are not advancing at similar rates to men. From teachers to engineers, investment bankers to checkout clerks, there's not an industry, occupation, or rank that we have looked at or we didn't see this being a problem. Now, considering that women, and women of color in particular, are still very much underrepresented, especially in higher level jobs, this is deeply troubling. But even if women actually manage to get to the upper levels, they're still much more likely to be burdened with office housework. That's clearly shown by surveys. So as an example, here's a quote from a female lawyer that is taken from such a survey. She says, "Despite superior educational credentials and being a lateral transfer from a far more prestigious firm, I was given an appropriate title but slotted into the subservient support role, that is expected to take notes, get coffee, hang men's jackets, and so on." And there are numerous reports just like this one, which have been published in recent years in studies about career opportunities for women, some of which I'd linked to the resource section that you find below. Finally, I'd like to highlight gender nonconforming and non-binary people who are perceived as female, because for them, in addition to the issues I just mentioned, being cast into a gender role that they do not identify with can cause strong discomfort and mental health problems. Now, all of these issues can contribute to people feeling devalued at work, burning out, and eventually leaving their company. So if you're in a management position, you actually risk losing valuable and especially diverse talent if you don't tackle this problem. So let's talk about what you can do to improve the situation at your company. Let's first talk about options for people in leadership roles. My first important bit of advice is to not rely on volunteer work to get things done at the office, because this will inevitably lead to problematic gender dynamics, because women are not only more likely to be chosen for menial tasks, they are unfortunately also much more likely to volunteer for them. And that's not because they enjoy them so much or because they're naturally good at them, but actually due to a gendered upbringing and social expectations. And in addition, women are discouraged from standing up for themselves and from saying no, because women who refuse assignments tend to be perceived as difficult. And this can actually negatively affect their reputation at the workplace. To quote Sheryl Sandberg on this, "A man who doesn't help is busy. A woman is selfish." So what you can do instead is to create a simple system to assign these tasks. First, you will have to identify what needs to be taken care of on a day-to-day basis and how many people are required to tackle these tasks. And then next, you make it mandatory for everyone, and I mean absolutely everyone, at work to take shifts on these tasks. You have different options here. You could simply assign people based on their last names in alphabetical order or whatever criteria you'd like to use. It doesn't really matter as long as these tasks are distributed equally among all employees. And maybe you could actually consider adding your own name to the cleaning roster to clearly show that these are assignments that you value, and just to contribute in your company. And maybe cleaning the kitchen with your employees will actually give you an opportunity to have interesting conversations, for example, about their projects, about their well-being, work culture, and what you can improve to make your employees more happy. And speaking of value, since it's very unlikely that you will be able to solve this issue overnight because it's a structural problem, try to pay more attention to those people who do more office housework or who excel at office housework, and actually consider this in your performance evaluations, because These people contribute to keeping things running at your office and making employees happy, which is extremely important work, so you should see it like that. Now, if you're an employee who is not personally affected by these dynamics, you essentially have two major options. So if your management still relies on volunteer work, then volunteer for these tasks yourself, especially when you notice that they usually tend to be assigned to the same people who are overwhelmed. And especially when you're in a relatively safe position at work, speak up if you notice a gender imbalance and suggest to implement another system like I just showed you. Educate your managers, educate your coworkers about the problems that gender dynamics can cause at work to persuade them to make a change. And please keep in mind that every employee who just leans back and stays silent contributes to upholding these problematic structures. So while it may be convenient for you to enjoy a clean office without actually having to clean it yourself, it's simply not fair. Finally, if you are personally affected by gender dynamics, then you're in a pretty difficult position, as I just pointed out. And I hesitate to give you advice because the burden to stand up and demand systemic change shouldn't be on you, especially if there's a risk of damaging your reputation and your career because of that. But generally, I'd recommend to turn down these assignments as often as possible in your position and pick a framing that makes you look more professional. So for example, you could say, I have this important task that needs to be finished by the end of the week, and I should focus on this to be able to deliver high quality work. If you say it like this, you don't just refuse, which could be perceived as rude, but you simply prioritize and you suggest that the company will benefit more from your working hours and the money they spend if you focus on your task. This is just one recommendation. There are actually plenty more. If you'd like to do more reading about this, then please check out the list of resources that you can see here and also again in the description below. So if you need advice for yourself or for coworkers, please make sure to read these articles and generally try to educate yourself on this topic. Thank you so much for listening as always, and see you next time. Bye bye.